I don't usually drive that late anymore. But that night, I didn't have much of a choice. It was around 11:40 p.m., and I was heading back from visiting my sister. She lived just outside of town, about 40 minutes from my place. The roads between her neighborhood and mine were the kind that looked normal during the day. Gas stations, old diners, a few blinking traffic lights. But after dark, it felt different. Empty. Too quiet. I remember having the windows down a little because the night was cool. The air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. My headlights stretched out over the cracked asphalt, catching bits of fog that drifted low across the road. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light. A man standing on the shoulder of the road, maybe 50 feet ahead, right under a flickering streetlight. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there. I slowed down automatically. I mean, it's not like you expect to see someone walking that late, that far from town. My first thought was that maybe his car broke down. I rolled past him slowly. He was wearing a dark hoodie, jeans, and I noticed he had no visible bag or flashlight. But what stood out to me, even in that quick glance, was the way he was facing the road. Not the woods, not a broken down car. Just facing the traffic lane, like he was waiting for something. I drove a little further, then checked my rearview mirror. He hadn't moved an inch. Something about it didn't sit right. So I turned down the radio and kept glancing at the mirror, expecting him to start walking or wave for help. But he didn't. He just stood there under that buzzing light, completely still. A few seconds later, I passed a gas station. The lights were off, the lot empty, but the sign still glowed faintly. Open 24 hours. Clearly not true. That's when my phone vibrated in the cup holder. A random spam message. But when I looked up again, I swear my heart skipped. There was someone walking along the shoulder of the road again. Up ahead this time. Same hoodie, same jeans, same posture. I slowed almost to a crawl. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was another person. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks. But as I passed, I caught a clearer look. He had the same face. Expressionless. Blank. He didn't look up at me or move. And that's when something deep in me, some instinct I can't explain, told me not to stop, not even to look again. I pressed on the gas, eyes locked straight ahead. The road curved slightly and I lost sight of him in the rear view. For about 10 minutes, I kept driving, trying to convince myself I imagined it. I even laughed out loud at one point, just to break the tension. But the laugh came out hollow. The town's lights were still a few miles off when I saw something that made my stomach twist. A car. Parked on the side of the road, hazard lights flashing. I slowed down again. The driver's door was open, and for a second I thought maybe the guy from before had finally found his car. But there was no one inside. The engine was still running. I could hear it as I rolled to a stop a few feet away. I hesitated, hand hovering over the gear shift. The right thing to do would have been to call someone, maybe the sheriff's office. But in small towns like this, things are slow, and I didn't want to get involved if it wasn't serious. Then I noticed the passenger door. It was slightly open too, and through the crack I saw movement. It looked like someone sitting in the back seat, slumped forward, their head against the window. I turned my high beams on. The back seat was empty, but the moment my lights hit that car, the passenger door swung open, just a few inches, slow, creaking, like someone inside had just gotten out. I didn't wait to see more. I hit the gas and sped off. My pulse was hammering. I glanced at the clock. 12:07 a.m. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see headlights behind me, but there was nothing. Nothing until I hit the first street leading back into town. I stopped at a red light, and that's when I saw movement again. Not ahead this time, but in the reflection of my rearview mirror. There was someone standing at the edge of the road behind my car. Not moving, just standing there. The same figure, the same hoodie. And in that split second before the light turned green, I realized his head was tilted slightly downward, but his face was turned toward me. Even though he was easily 30 yards back, I could see the faintest white of his eyes in my taillights. I didn't even check the intersection. I just went. I drove through town at nearly twice the speed limit, all the way until I pulled into my apartment parking lot. The lot was dim, just a few cars, streetlights humming quietly. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, trying to calm down. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I'd just been tired, seeing patterns where there weren't any. But when I finally looked at the front of my car, I noticed something that froze me completely. On the edge of my hood, faint but visible under the streetlight, were muddy handprints, one on each side, pressed deep into the dust, like someone had leaned forward against the car and pushed. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying everything. The man by the road, the car, the open doors. The next morning, I went out to look again. The handprints were gone, but the dirt around them was still disturbed, like someone had wiped them clean. Later, when I mentioned it to a guy at work, he said, "Oh yeah, people see weird stuff on that stretch. There used to be a rest stop there years ago. A guy got hit by a car and died instantly." I laughed it off, but that night, when I got home, I noticed something else. A small mud stain on my driver's side door. A perfect smudge, shaped like a thumbprint. I still drive that same road sometimes when I visit my sister. And every now and then, out of the corner of my eye, I swear I see a figure standing by the shoulder, waiting. But I never slow down anymore, not even to look. Because that night, I learned something important. Sometimes the things standing by the road are already waiting for you. I used to live in this small apartment complex just outside of town. It wasn't bad, a little old, sure, but cheap and quiet. I moved in after my breakup, hoping for some peace. My place was Unit 4A, second floor, at the far end of the hallway. Right next door was 4B. I never saw the person who lived there. That building had this stillness. Even during the day, the walls seemed to swallow sound. You'd hear footsteps sometimes, but they always felt muffled, distant, like they didn't belong to anyone. The first week I moved in, I noticed something odd about 4B. The doormat was clean, spotless actually. No shoes, no trash bag ever left outside, nothing taped to the door. And yet, I could hear movement inside. Not voices, just movement. A dragging sound. Sometimes faint thuds. At first, I thought maybe it was just someone working nights or moving furniture. But then I realized it always happened around the same time, between 2 and 3 a.m. every single night. It started bothering me enough that I asked the landlord about it. She frowned and said, "You mean 4B?" I nodded. She hesitated, then said, "Oh, that one's been empty for a while." Last tenant moved out months ago. I remember just standing there, kind of frozen. I told her I'd been hearing noises coming from inside. She sighed and said it was probably the pipes or maybe raccoons in the wall. I wanted to believe that. That night I stayed up just to see if I was imagining things. I kept the TV on low, muted most of the time, and just listened. At exactly 2:17 a.m., I heard it again, a dull scraping sound, then a thump. It came from the wall directly behind my bed, the one separating my apartment from 4B. I pressed my ear against it. There was a faint rhythm to the sound. Slow, deliberate, scrape, thud, scrape, thud. It went on for maybe a minute, then stopped. I sat up for a long time, waiting for it to start again. It didn't, at least not that night. 2 days later, I was coming home from work around 6:30 p.m. when I saw something that made my stomach tighten. The door to 4B was slightly open, just a crack. I slowed down in the hallway. The lights overhead were buzzing faintly, that cheap fluorescent kind. I could see into the dark of the apartment. No light, no sound. "Hello?" I called, knocking gently. No answer. I don't know why, but I nudged the door a little further open. It creaked, loud, like no one had opened it in a long time. Inside was pitch black. The air smelled stale, like dust and something faintly metallic. I reached for the light switch, but before I could flip it, I heard something move inside. Just a small, quick shuffle, like someone stepping back into another room. That's when I shut the door. Hard. I remember my hands shaking as I walked to my apartment. I locked the door behind me and sat down, trying to calm myself. After a while, I convinced myself it was just my imagination again. Maybe maintenance had been in there, checking something. But when I went to bed that night, I made sure to push my dresser against the wall. The next morning, I decided to ask the landlord again. I told her what I'd seen, that the door was open and I thought maybe someone had broken in. She looked genuinely confused. "I have the only key," she said, "and that door should be locked." I didn't say anything else, just nodded. But that same night, it got worse. At around 1:50 a.m., I woke up to a sound that made my skin crawl. It was a faint tapping, coming from my wall, not scraping anymore, not footsteps, just tapping. Slow, 3 knocks, then silence. I held my breath, staring at the wall in the dark. A minute passed. Then, tap, tap, tap. Exactly the same rhythm. I whispered, "Hello?" without thinking. The sound stopped immediately. Then, from the other side of the wall, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A faint, shaky whisper. "Don't." I froze. It was so quiet I almost thought I imagined it, but I know I heard it. A man's voice. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I went straight to the landlord's office again. This time, she didn't look confused. She looked uneasy. She told me she'd go check the unit herself. About an hour later, she knocked on my door. Her face was pale. "There's no one in 4B, she said quietly, "and the place is completely empty." I asked if maybe someone had a spare key. She shook her head. Then she said something I'll never forget. The carpet was damp near the shared wall, like something leaked through from your side. My side? I just stared at her. There was no leak, no pipes there. That was the wall behind my bed. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in the living room with all the lights on. No sounds at first, just silence. Then at 2:08 a.m., I heard it again, the tapping. But this time, it wasn't from the wall. It was from my front door. 3 slow knocks. I stood up, every muscle tense. Didn't move closer, just stared. The knocks came again. Then a voice, the same faint whisper. "Please open it." It was right outside. I looked through the peephole. There was no one there. But then, I realized something. The hallway light outside my door was off. It's always on. Always. And as my eyes adjusted, I could barely make out a shadow standing just out of view, near the wall opposite my door. It was tall, still, facing me. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then the whisper came again, closer this time. "Why'd you move the dresser?" That was enough. I grabbed my keys, ran out the back stairwell, and spent the rest of the night in my car. The next day, I came back with a friend. We packed up my stuff, and I told the landlord I was breaking my lease. I didn't care about losing the deposit. As we were leaving, my friend went pale. He pointed at my door. There were 3 faint scratches running down the paint, like someone had dragged their fingers down it. I moved out that afternoon. A week later, I got a text from my old landlord. She said she checked both 4A and 4B to start repainting. She ended it with, "Just so you know, the wall behind your bed, it sounded hollow. We're calling someone to open it up." She never told me what they found, and I never asked, because sometimes I still wake up at 2:17 a.m., thinking I hear tapping behind my headboard. But when I open my eyes, the sound is coming from the wall, the one that isn't supposed to have anyone living on the other side. I used to work nights delivering for a local courier company. It wasn't food. We handled packages, medical samples, documents, sometimes small electronics, stuff that couldn't wait till morning. Most nights were uneventful, just me, the van, and empty streets. But there was one night I still can't explain. The night I made my last delivery. It was Friday sometime around 11:30 p.m. My last route was supposed to be a simple one, just a small box to drop off at an address on the outskirts of town. The GPS said it would take about 20 minutes. I remember being tired, the kind of tired where your eyes burn and your thoughts start to drift. I had the radio on low just to stay awake. As I left the main road, the houses got further apart, the streetlights too. Soon it was just me, driving through quiet residential streets where every house looked dark. The address was 1227 Lakeview Drive. Except when I got there wasn't a lake. Just a narrow road, a few trees, and an old one-story house with the porch light off. I double-checked the GPS. It insisted this was the place. The box was light, about the size of a shoebox. No return address, just the delivery label and a small red sticker that said time sensitive. I parked by the curb, engine still running. The air outside was damp and heavy, the kind of silence that feels like it's pressing against your ears. I walked up the small concrete steps to the porch. There was no doorbell, just an old knocker shaped like a lion's head. I knocked once, waited. Nothing. Knocked again. Louder. Still nothing. I was about to leave the package by the door when I noticed movement through the side window. A faint shadow like someone had just stepped away. "Hello," I called. "Courier service. I've got a delivery for 1,227. No response. But the door handle turned slightly, just a click. Then stillness. That's when I felt something shift, a cold tingle creeping up the back of my neck. I told myself it was nothing. Probably an old house, drafty hinges. I set the box down on the porch and stepped back. And then, from inside, I heard it. A slow dragging sound, like furniture being pulled across the floor. It stopped right behind the door. I started backing toward my van when the porch light flickered on. It startled me so bad I almost tripped. The light buzzed faintly overhead. That's when I saw it. The box I'd left by the door was gone. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd set it somewhere else. But no. I remembered placing it right on the welcome mat, and now there was nothing there. I looked at the window again, and this time, there was a shape behind the curtain, not moving, just standing. I called out again, "Hey, did you get the package?" Silence, then slowly, the curtain moved just enough for me to see one pale eye staring back. I froze, didn't breathe, didn't move. The curtain fell shut again, and the porch light turned off. I ran to my van, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my phone twice trying to open the delivery app. It said, "Delivered, 11:49 p.m. I hadn't marked it as delivered. I swear I didn't. I stared at the timestamp for a long moment, then put the van in drive. But before I could pull away, I saw something in my rearview mirror. The front door of the house had opened. Someone was standing there, completely still in the doorway. The porch light stayed off, but the shape was unmistakable. Tall, thin, and wrong. Like their arms hung just a little too low. I hit the gas and didn't look back. A few minutes later, when I reached the main road, my phone buzzed again. New message. From an unknown number. It said, "You forgot one." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Then another message came through. "Check the back." I slowed down, glancing in the rearview mirror. The back of the van was dark, but I thought I saw movement, just a flicker of something shifting in the corner. I pulled into a gas station lot under the lights, got out, walked around, and opened the back doors. Nothing, just the empty delivery crates and straps. I was breathing hard, my pulse in my throat. I closed the doors and started walking back toward the driver's side when I heard a faint tap from inside the van. I froze. It came again, then again, rhythmic. Coming from inside one of the crates I thought was empty. Slowly, I unlatched the nearest one and lifted the lid. Inside was a small brown box, the same kind I'd just delivered. Same red, time-sensitive sticker. Only this one had something new written on it in black marker. My name. I dropped it immediately and stumbled back. My first thought was that someone was messing with me. Maybe a coworker pranking me through dispatch. But when I checked the label, the delivery address had changed. It now said 4A Riverbend Apartments, my address. I didn't touch it again. I just slammed the doors shut, got in the van, and drove straight back to the depot. When I arrived, the night manager was half asleep at his desk. I told him everything, or at least most of it. He looked at me like I was insane. When we went out to check the van together, the box was gone. Every crate was empty. No time-sensitive labels, no handwriting, nothing. I quit that job 2 days later. Couldn't bring myself to do another night shift. But a week later, around midnight, I heard a knock on my apartment door. 3 soft taps. I looked through the peephole. No one there. When I opened the door, I found a small brown box sitting on my doormat. No label, no writing, just a red sticker that said, "Time sensitive." I didn't open it. I left it right there, closed the door, and didn't move until morning. When I finally worked up the courage to look again, the box was gone. But there was something new. A muddy footprint facing inward, like someone had been standing there all night, waiting for me to open the door.